Today I'm finally going to tell you the story about the time Andy got naked in the co-op. Hello folks, and welcome to something a little bit different on today's vlog, because we're going to do a little bit of story time. We did some of this a little while ago, it went down quite well, and we have a good opportunity and a good reason for doing some more story time, because the National Autistic Society got in touch with me recently with a question, a very important question. They asked, why is Autism Hour important to us? And as usual, when someone asks me a question, I wanted to answer in the form of a story, because I like to talk. You might have noticed that I like to talk. Now, I fully recognise before we get into the meat of the story that there might be some of you watching who are saying, Kev, what is Autism Hour? You're about to tell us a story about why Autism Hour is important. I don't even know what it is. I'm glad you asked. Autism Hour is an event put on by the National Autistic Society. It's taking place soon, between October the 6th and October the 13th this year, and it basically involves raising autism awareness amongst staff in shops, so they can do things like turn the music down, dim really bright lights, share information about autism, and just generally make the experience of going shopping a lot less intimidating for autistic people. So bearing that information in mind, I wanted to tell you the story about probably the worst shopping experience we ever had with Andy. And it's an experience that I'm kind of telling you the story secondhand. It's very much Anna's story. I only came into it towards the end, but it's definitely one that needs telling, and we've hinted at this on the channel before. We've even got a video on the channel called The First Time Since He Got Naked at the Co-op, because it was pretty much the first time that Anna went out with Andy on her own again after this incident. So without further ado, let's get into the story. And in order for the story to make sense, it is important that we have the full context of the situation at the time. As long-term viewers will know, there was a period of time in the not too distant past where Andy was completely refusing to go to school. It started Christmas time of year 7, he's now just going into year 10, so it started Christmas time of year 7, he ended up being off school throughout the rest of year 7, the whole of year 8, only going back to school at the start of year 9, about a year ago from now. So he had about 18 months off of school, and this story takes place probably about 6 months into that, so about a third of the way into our 18-month journey. And by that point, he'd been off school quite a long time. He'd become more and more dependent on Anna, and the two of them were getting to the point where the only time they got to leave the house was if they maybe nipped to the park down the road, which Andy didn't want to do very often, or the more frequent reason for them leaving the house would be to head down to the shops to buy something that they needed. Anna had already had to give up uni at that point. You'll know she's back at university now, but she was in her first year of university when Andy first started refusing to go to school. She had to give up in order to be at home for him, and the trips to the shops were important. It got them out of the house, it got them out of this room, because pretty much the rest of the time they were in this room. I was still working as a teacher at that point, so I was out of the house all day every day. It was just the two of them inside these four walls pretty much 24/7, apart from when they got to nip out to go down the shops. But as time went on and Andy's anxiety got worse and worse, and this was before we had our referral to CAMS, it was before he was given any medication for his anxiety, and things were just getting really hard for him. He was going for a really, really tough time. And they went to the shops one day, they went to the Co-op, which, I mean, it's about a mile and a bit from where we live, so bearing in mind Anna's only got little legs, she's only 5 foot tall, it's probably a good 15-20 minute walk for the two of them to walk from here down to the Co-op. Nice bit of exercise, nice bit of fresh air, gets them out of the house. And Andy wanted something. It's so far in the past now, I forget exactly what he wanted. I mean, it's going to be fairly limited. It'll be pop or crisps or probably biscuits maybe, but there was something specific that they'd run out of, they needed to go to the shops and get, so they headed off towards the Co-op, and unfortunately as soon as they got there and headed to the aisle where this thing was supposed to be, it wasn't there. They were run out, they didn't have any. At least they didn't have any in the normal place. There could have been some somewhere else in the store, but they never actually got to the point of being able to check that, because almost immediately upon Andy seeing that the thing they were going for wasn't there, he just went into meltdown. It was total sensory overload from the loud music, the bright lights, all the noise, all the people. It was market day. there was lots of people around, and he was feeling very anxious, very uncomfortable being there in the first place, and it just tipped him over the edge. I'm putting myself through this horrible experience for a purpose. I want this thing. I'm gritting my teeth and getting through it in order to get the thing. Right, I can't get the thing. I can't hold this off anymore. Went into meltdown, and at the time, a meltdown for Andy involved taking off all his clothes, dropping to the floor and screaming at the top of his voice, lashing out, kicking, just would completely lose control, and he would do it nude. He would be naked, and that's what he did in the middle of the co-op. He just took off all of his clothes, dropped to the floor and started shouting, which obviously then drew the attention of everybody else in the store. All heads turned towards what was a 12-year-old boy lying naked on the floor of the supermarket. Now imagine being Anna in this situation. Her and Andy are roughly the same size. There's no way she can pick him up and carry him to get him out of the shop, or there's no forcing somebody to put their clothes back on if they really don't want to wear them. Even if she'd have been able to get him out of the shop, what's she supposed to do? She's a 20-minute walk away from home. I'm at work like 8 miles away with our only car, and she can't, even if the car was at home, she can't drive. She had no way to get him home, even if she got him out of the shop. It's springtime, it's not warm. Even if walking him home naked was an option, it was too cold to be able to do it. She was completely stuck. There was no solution for her. She was literally stranded with him in the middle of the co-op while he's having a naked meltdown. And the only way Andy can ever come through the other side of a meltdown is if he can get in his room, in his safe space, shut himself off from the world and just get it out of his system, work through it. But he's having this meltdown in a very highly stimulating environment. There's bright lights, there's loud music, there's people looking and talking and asking if everything's okay. All of it's piling on and making it worse and worse and worse, and there's nothing anybody can do about it. He is at his lowest point. Now, as I mentioned before, I was working as a teacher. It's not like I've got my mobile phone in my pocket at all times. Anna tried to ring me. I didn't even answer straight away. It ended up being a message that passed through the school reception. They came down to my classroom. I had to leave my class in the middle of a lesson, head out to my car, drive home, or drive to the co-op. By the time I got to the supermarket they were in, it was 25 minutes into this. He'd been naked on the floor of the co-op for at least 20 minutes. And again, there's no reasoning with him when we get there. Our sole focus was, we've got to get him home, we've got to get him into his room. And we tried, or the two of us combined, tried to get him to put his clothes on one last time, tried to get him to walk out to the car, and he was just completely overwhelmed by the situation, wasn't able to do it. And in the end, all we could do was drape my coat over him to protect his dignity as much as we could. And then I literally just picked him up, carried him across the supermarket car park, naked, just covered in a coat, put him in the back of the car. We drove him home. He went up to his room. He did calm down. He was ultimately fine. But as you can imagine, Anna wasn't that keen to ever take him out on her own to the shops again. And she didn't for a long time. It was probably another year or so before they ventured out of the house alone without me again. So what had been they're trapped in this room most of the time, but they get to go out occasionally, became they're completely trapped in this room all of the time. And it's one of the major contributing factors, which eventually led to me leaving my job and becoming a YouTuber so that we could pay the bills in a way that allowed me to be around the house. And the reason this all links back into Autism Hour is because if it had taken place within an Autism Hour, then a lot of the stuff that was overwhelming Andy would have been mitigated. The lights wouldn't have been so intimidatingly bright, the music wouldn't have been so loud, there would have been more staff on hand who understood what was happening, would be able to understand how to help. Now we were quite lucky. The staff in the co-op that day were very understanding, and they just came to Anna, asked if she was okay. She said yes. They asked if there's anything they could do to help. She said no. And they left her to it, despite the fact she's there with a naked 12-year-old in the doorway of their supermarket. They literally just left her to it and just directed customers around her. They were fantastic. We were very lucky. But he still had all the sensory overload stuff going on as well. Unfortunately, Autism Hour didn't exist at all back then. It does exist now, and if a similar situation was to happen during an Autism Hour, I'd like to think he would have stood a better chance of being able to maintain some control, because there'd be more understanding people around, there'd be information being shared with customers as well as having an understanding staff member, and he wouldn't have had all of the huge sensory inputs that were going on at the same time as well. Now, as you'd have seen from watching the vlog recently, obviously shopping trips aren't always like that for us now. Sometimes we have some tense moments, and our shopping trips aren't always as straightforward and easy as they sometimes look in the vlog, because we don't show you all the preparation that goes into them. For us to be able to take Andy on a shopping trip that he doesn't want to go on, if there's nothing in it for him, it is very much a case of having to plan it in advance, sometimes an hour, sometimes a day. He'll sometimes just refuse to go out, even now, but we have to plan it with him in advance, explain to him what's going to be going on. We let him know how many items we're going to be buying, what we're going to be buying, and he will then walk around the shop counting things as they go into the trolley. And if we go over the amount that we've agreed with him, or get something that we didn't plan to get, he'll get frustrated. If something that we wanted to get isn't there, or isn't where it's supposed to be, he'll get very frustrated. If we go over 10 items, if we go into double figures, he does start to get very, very agitated at the situation, because he just doesn't want to be there. There are few things in life he hates more than walking up and down supermarket aisles, to him seemingly aimlessly. We do have a secret weapon for supermarket trips now though, because of the love of checkouts that he's developed over recent years, and we are now able to use that as a motivator. So to get him around the shops, if he goes around the shops and does everything that we've agreed that we're going to do, he gets the reward of being able to use the checkouts, being able to use the tills. There have been times in the not too distant past where we've got halfway around a shop, he's refused to cooperate, and we've just had to leave our shopping there and leave, because we are trying to avoid another situation like what happened in the co-op. And it's those little things that are why we feel that Autism Hour is such an important thing to support, to throw our name and our support and our awareness behind, because it's all about raising awareness amongst the people who are working in the shops, the people who are visiting the shops. It's not just about dimming the lights, turning the music down. That's part of it, and that is helpful, but for us the really important part is spreading that message of what autism is, why Andy's behaving in the way he is. That is hugely important to us, so that if we are halfway around Tesco and we have to abandon a half-filled trolley, we don't get an angry, what are you doing, why are you, and I imagine we wouldn't get that anyway, but we'd get someone who just understood, like the person that we got in the co-op who was an absolute hero. The whole shopping universe is going to be full of people who understand. They know what's going on, they know what they can and can't do to help and support us through these situations, and that is just massive. It's so important. And our long-term dream and hope are that through raising awareness with shop staff, with the companies that run these shops, they'll start to become more autism friendly, even outside of these autism hours. I know this one is a big ask, but there's just little things like when they rearrange the supermarket. You've all been in a supermarket and they've just rearranged everything. We all know why they do it. It's because if you have to go and look for a product, you're going to see other products on the way. You're more likely to spend more if you can't just go straight to the bread and buy the bread. If you have to go where the bread is and now it's not bread anymore, you have to go and look for the bread, you'll see the special offer sweets at the end of the aisle and you'll buy them too. I understand why they do that, and I understand why they're not going to stop doing that. What I don't understand is why so very often they move everything around but don't change the signage. The big signs that are at the top of the aisles that tell you what's down the aisles, sometimes they take weeks or months after the stuff has been moved for the signs to be moved as well. So we walk into a shop looking for a specific thing that we've agreed with Andy we're going to find. We go to the aisle, we know where it's supposed to be. Okay, it's moved. We look up at the signs. He looks up at the signs. We're in there for a loaf of bread. He looks up at the signs. We're down the bread aisle. There's no bread. To him that means there is no bread. So we can't go and look down the other aisles to try and find the bread, because we're down the bread aisle. It says up there that this is the bread aisle. And this is stuff that happens, and with that little bit of extra understanding and awareness, a little bit more thought could go into that. By all means, carry on moving. In an ideal world, you don't swap your supermarkets around every 6 months, but I know you're not going to stop doing that. But at least swap the signs at the same time, or put a little sticker or poster or something where the bread used to be, telling us where the bread is now. And just little things like that would make a world of difference. Is it really necessary to have absolutely blinding, super bright fluorescent lighting when you've got a glass fronted building that lets in so much natural light? Can we not get a little bit of a better balance on that lighting situation? The more we raise awareness, the more we get involved with things like Autism Hour, the more shops get involved, the more people are aware of it, the more likely we are to get some real positive change that's going to benefit everybody, not just people with autism. Because believe it or not, Andy's not the only one who probably didn't enjoy the experience of being naked in the doorway of a supermarket. I imagine most of the people who visited the supermarket that day would have preferred that not to happen. And through things like Autism Hour, we can all help make stuff like that less likely to happen. So I'm going to wrap this very different style of video up by reminding you once again that the National Autistic Society's Autism Hour, which is supported by The Entertainer, takes place this year between October the 6th and October the 13th. You can find out more about the event by visiting the link that's down in the description. I urge you to go along and support your local Autism Hour. We're going to do exactly that. I've already been on the website and checked out where our local Autism Hours are, and we will definitely be going along to support them, because things like this deserve your support, because the more successful it is, the more likely it is to happen more, and that's all positive stuff for helping raise autism awareness and making situations like the one I've described in this video less likely to happen in the future. I will leave it there for today. Normal service will resume on the vlog tomorrow. I hope you have enjoyed this video. If you have, please make sure you leave a nice big thumbs up on there for us. Subscribe to the channel for more daily vlogs, and thank you very much for watching.